when I found out that HBO Max, which I had never heard of because it's an American streaming service, was banning, for a little while anyway, Gone with the Wind, I had a couple of thoughts. First one was, big deal, it's an American service and I don't get that. And I'm not inclined to get a VPN so that I can access something that I probably wouldn't watch. The second thing I remembered was, I have never seen Gone with the Wind. Now, I know it's incredibly famous. I know I'm a movie buff. I know I'm supposed to be something of an amateur expert about these things, but I had never seen it. I wasn't going to watch it when it was on TV back in the day because there is no way you're going to watch a 4-hour movie with TV commercials added, because who's got the time for that kind of thing? And secondly, I just didn't get around to it. Now, I realized too that we had a copy of it up in the back room in the library, and it was still in its wrapper. Because everybody is suddenly talking about Gone with the Wind, which they hadn't talked about for years, it seemed a good time to unwrap the movie, watch it, and give you my impressions of it, given that I am watching it for the first time in the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century, and not in 1938 when the movie came out. I've got something else to show you too. I've got a new camera. You ready for this? Watch how fast it focuses on the DVD, and then back to my face. Yeah, I've got a vlogging camera, so yeah. Leaving aside the geekery there, my thoughts on Gone with the Wind. I'm not going to do any kind of summary about what the movie's about. You kind of know what it's about. It's about the Civil War. It's about a woman called Scarlett O'Hara and a guy called Red Butler. It's about 4 hours long. First off, I hate Scarlett O'Hara.
Fiddly-dee.
Do not like the character at all. It gives us a bit of historical context in a good way, in showing that narcissistic personality disorder is not a new phenomenon. And I kind of got the idea, and this is the way my head works, is that if Scarlett O'Hara was alive in 2020, she'd be basically a beauty vlogger, because all she is empty. Now, there's some scenes at the start of the movie which include, interestingly enough, George Reeves, who was the guy who played Superman in the TV series. Vivien Leigh is very good in the role. Really fine actor. She had problems during her life with bipolar disorder. Her career and her life didn't go the way she wanted to, but she is on point playing this character, which is a malignant, nasty piece of work. She's egotistical. She doesn't care about anybody else. When adversity hits in the aftermath of the Civil War, her takeaway from the fact that her whole world's crumbled and her worldview has been discredited by the fact that other people have prevailed is, I'm going to make sure I'm not hungry again, and I'm going to keep my plantation going. It's not I'm going to rebuild her life, I'm going to try to help people. It's none of that. It's all about her. So she's an egotistical monster. She marries a guy during the Civil War because she couldn't get the guy she wants, Ashley Wilkes, played by Leslie Howard. So he dies off conveniently during the war. Then after the war, she marries a guy she knew before the war because he has a successful business and she can get money from him. He's an older guy and she marries him for the bucks, basically. Not that that could happen in the 21st century, but it happened in the 19th century. She then marries for a third time Red Butler, who knows what kind of egotistical monster she is, but he wants her anyway and he loves her now. So for me, in a movie where any two characters fall in love, you kind of need to know why they fall in love. What qualities does one see in the other that causes them to fall in love? And for me, Red Butler's love for Scarlett O'Hara doesn't seem to be anything besides kind of lust and wanting to conquer a narcissistic woman. There are so many parts of this movie I find problematic to an extreme, and in ways that aren't really of our time rather than of their time. At the time the movie was made, there were NAACP protests against it being made. Margaret Mitchell's novel was crazily popular. So even at the time this was being made, people knew it was problematic. And Hattie McDaniel, who won an Oscar as Best Supporting Actress for her role as Mammy in Gone with the Wind. And yeah, it's deserved. She's good in the role. But the role itself is crazily problematic. It makes me uncomfortable in the worst possible way. And even with the historical context, and Hattie McDaniel herself said she'd rather earn $700 a week playing a maid in a movie than $7 a week being one. And I totally understand that. I understand poverty, I understand disenfranchisement. I totally understand where she's coming from on this. But the movie weaponizes her character in some really ugly ways. There's a scene after the war where there are black people walking on footpaths and they're standing around in bowler hats smoking cigars, and there's somebody dancing for his friends, he's tap dancing and things like that. And the movie makes Mammy arch through these people, dragging Scarlett O'Hara in her wake, weaponizing her against people who are just enjoying themselves on the streets. And that made me incredibly uncomfortable. The character has a depth of feeling that a lot of the other characters don't, and unfortunately she seems to have a love for the family, Scarlett O'Hara's family, that is not reciprocated in any way. She's loyal, she's supportive, she does a lot of work for them, and that there's no reciprocity there. Incredibly racist. There's no way around that. And then there's the character of Prissy, played by Butterfly McQueen, who, well, I'm not even going to go into that. That's just beyond the pale for me. And there are other aspects of the movie that are crazily problematic too. There are positive female role models, I suppose, in the movie. There's Melanie, played by Olivia de Havilland, who's a good, honest person by her own lights. Her husband, Ashley, who kind of is okay, I suppose, but he says that he was going to free the slaves anyway when his father died. But that's easier to say after you lose the war. Then there's also the only person who seems to have a moral compass on there is a woman called Belle Whatley, played by Anna Munson, who is basically a madam in a brothel and a friend of Red Butler's. And she's the only one who seems to have compassion. Yes, she does give money to the Confederate cause, even though people won't accept it because she's a brothel keeper. There's some really interesting dynamics between her and Red Butler, which I think in the book are more complex. But she's the only character really I liked in the whole movie, because who's who she is. She lives life on her own terms. She's a businesswoman, and yeah, there's a kind of relatability to the character that everybody else in the movie doesn't have. Red Butler himself is crazily problematic for a number of reasons. There's a scene where Scarlett is attacked by some people from a shantytown because she drives through the shantytown in her horse and carriage because she's an entitled white lady. Of course, she's going to go wherever she likes. Some guys attack her, and she's rescued by a black man who was on her plantation before the war. And then the menfolk go out and decide to burn down the shantytown and attack the people who attacked Scarlett.
We thought it best not to tell you, Scarlett, but Ashley and Frank and the others have gone to clean out those woods where you were attacked.
It's all done off screen, and when they come back, Scarlett's second husband has been killed off screen. Now, the reason all that's off screen is Red Butler and the other people who went to basically destroy the shantytown were the KKK, but they didn't want to say that in the movie. This is Birth of a Nation by stealth, and I find that really problematic. The other thing I find most problematic about Red Butler as a character is rape within marriage. He raped Scarlett O'Hara, and the egregious and horrible thing this movie does is this is Scarlett O'Hara the next morning. Now, for personal family reasons, I've got no truck with rape within or without marriage. I have family members who were devastated and almost destroyed by rape, and I've got no tolerance for that kind of shit. I don't care if it's the 1930s. I don't care about any of that crap. It's disgusting. From a technical point of view, the movie is adept. There are the enormous crowd scenes. There are the ways of telling a story. There's a scale of the movie, the costuming, the detailed of the set designs. All of that stuff is incredibly adept and admirable in the fact that the technicians were able to do that. And of course, there was that enormous publicity boost of which actress is going to play Scarlett O'Hara. They were talking Betty Davis, they were talking Tallulah Bankhead, they were talking a whole bunch of people. And there was, in old school media, a real media buzz about who was going to play the role, and eventually, of course, Vivien Leigh got it. Been thinking about the movie since I saw it a couple of days ago, and there have been not too many times when it was entirely out of my mind, and I kind of tried to understand the strength of my feelings against this movie, and I've come down to this. If you adjust for inflation, this is the most successful motion picture in the history of motion pictures. There is nothing that exceeds it from that point of view. And it's a racist, sexist, misogynistic, nasty movie. And the fact that it is, well, the most successful piece of work from a financial point of view in a medium of which I dedicate my life to a certain extent, really makes me sad. I wish everybody in the world would go out and buy a copy of Casablanca just so it could fucking knock off Gone with the Wind from that pinnacle of success. It's a horrible movie, and I mean, judge it for yourself. HBO Max is going to put it back on with historical context around it, and probably with a crawl at the start of it. The introductory crawl you get in the movie is horrible. It's about how the gallant soldiers of the South and the gallant men and women of the South, and how wonderful the pre-war period was in the South, and how beautiful the women were, and how gallant the men were, all that kind of shit. It's a nasty, antique artifact, which I was saddened to watch, because it is that most successful movie in the world. It is a movie I'm not going to watch again. I don't like it. I think there are movies of the time that are much better. Citizen Kane a year later was a much, much better movie. I'm almost in tears about the fact that this is the most successful movie in history. It really does diminish the way I see cinema. And I know that that's hyperbole, and I know that's over the top, but I'm just expressing my feelings about watching this movie now. I think that there are any number of movies that, for me, are better films. The narrative is better. In the 50s, there was even Raintree County with Montgomery Clifton, Elizabeth Taylor, and Lee Marvin and Rod Taylor, which I found a much better movie from that historic same period of time point of view. But for me, Gone with the Wind is toxic. Now, having said that, there are actors in this movie that I like, and I've seen in other roles that I like a lot. Thomas Mitchell playing Scarlett's father, I like a lot as an actor. He done some incredibly adept work, and I like him at the start of the movie because he's an Irishman. He's kind of away from that American exceptionalism point of view, and I kind of like that character. And of course, he has a tragic ending. But it's good seeing actors you like, even in a movie like this. Victor Jory is in there as a carpetbagger. And I like Victor Jory in a lot of movies. George Reeves, of course, Superman, one of the heroes of my childhood, is in this. I mean, judge for yourself. It's up to each individual person how they see these things. I will keep it in a library. If somebody wants to borrow it at some stage, I will lend it to them. But for me, it's a movie that demonstrates some of the worst aspects of humanity, and the worst aspects particular of white people. Now, Australia is no better than America in this regard. Our history with Indigenous people here is no better than America's history with black people and First Nations people. I'm not trying to kind of say Americans are bad in that sense, but for me this movie really is unrewatchable. So sorry to give you a bit of a bummer this time around, but I really wanted to get off my chest how I felt about the movie. If you liked, although liked is probably a problematic way of expressing it, if you like this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to see more videos from me, please subscribe, and you can hit the notification bell. You can also help with the Patreon at patreon.com/paleocinema and put a little money towards producing of the videos. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I will be back soon with some more stuff. I'm going to make sure, I probably need to balance this one with something a little lighter next time around, so I'm going to work towards that. In the meantime, watch good movies, watch bad movies. Don't believe the hype about movies and experience them for yourself is probably the takeaway from this particular video. And in the meantime, watch some movies, enjoy some movies, and also question what you've heard about. I'll catch you guys next time.